Hey everyone, I wanted to do a video on high intensity weight training. I wanted to go over kind of like functional weight training and kind of functional exercise and stuff like that, because I think this is applicable for those that are competing in sport, training for sport, whether on an amateur or professional level, but also those, recovering from chronic illness. I do want to go maybe in a separate episode and maybe do a series on different exercises I think that are better for strength and conditioning and restorative exercise, because there really isn't much, I don't think, aside from graded exercise therapy, that is really applicable or useful even for those that are dealing with exercise intolerance, whether they're dealing with chronic Lyme, chronic fatigue syndrome, or something similar. I've been a fan of this methodology and kind of principles of how to train and kind of how to work out for about a dozen or so years. I've kind of changed and evolved a little bit my philosophy and how I go about this. I learned originally about this from the 21 convention about a dozen or so years ago. And from then I kind of did my own research and started training that way. I read Body by Science by Doug McGuff. I forgot the other author, and then also looked into Drew Bay and others as well too. This methodology and kind of principles and how you work out has been around since probably about the 60s or 70s. It kind of originally originated with Arthur Jones, who is a self-taught engineer and inventor who developed the Nautilus strength training kind of to embrace this methodology. And then from there, Mike and Ray kind of did their own thing. And I think even Dorian Yates trained a little bit this way. And then over time, there's been other people such as Jay Vincent, and there's Drew Bay, and everyone kind of has their different flavor or kind of different way of they kind of do it. There's not like a universal way, I would say. But generally speaking, it's done to, each set is done to failure. There's only, typically I do only about 4 or 5 compound exercises, and then I do 1, 2, or 3 isolation exercises. And I vary the order of the exercises, just so that different muscles fatigue at different rates, and so you kind of hit them all, because depending on genetics and how you train and stuff, different muscles will fatigue slower or faster. Typically it's done once or twice a week. Sometimes at the very most is 3. It really depends on your genetics, and you have to kind of work with someone and kind of see and track progress. But it's also important to use good form to kind of know at least some of what you're doing. Go through it slowly, go through it intensely, breathe throughout, and then, I kind of typically kind of hyperventilate or whatever near the end of it as my muscles are starting to fatigue and kind of give out. I think if you're really looking to kind of work out efficiently and effectively, and also in a timely manner, this is a good way to train. I don't think, there's a lot of misinformation and in my opinion, BS from exercise, enthusiasts, sports coaches, strength and conditioning coaches and stuff like that. I used to actually train in martial arts and MMA before kind of I had a health crisis and health problems and stuff like that. And I still see some of this to this day. I think there's a much better way of strength and conditioning for a sport or something, and that's by actually practicing or training in that sport, and then maybe supplementing a little bit of cardio here and there with maybe some running or sprints or some cycling, but a minimal at the very most, because I think it would be better spent either training or practicing that sport, meditating, working on yourself, blah, blah, blah. So over time, there's been some changes and stuff. Personally, I did kind of the big 5 exercises from Body by Science. I still sort of do that, but then I add in some isolation exercises, some of which I've picked up over time, because I really try to hit like my whole body, especially kind of problem areas for me. Still ongoing with TMJ and other issues. I use exercises to kind of work on my hands and wrists and forearms, but also to develop strength in my neck as well too, and in my jaw. Although I do use some exercise at home. I use a jaw exercise I use a kind of a hand grip, a variable hand grip thing that also helps with that, and other stuff. But, I think this is applicable for those that, are recovering from chronic illness, that are, the casual weight trainer and stuff like that, bodybuilder and stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyways, I think that, this is my opinion. This is how I plan on training and continue planning on training probably throughout my life. I've never quite got into weight training or kind of delved into it and kind of the biomechanics and stuff like that until probably about 10 years or so, actually more than 10 years. But I think it's important to, use proper form. You don't have to go through the full range of motion necessarily, because if you overextend one way or the other, that can cause injury. But good form, slow, and intensity. I think intensity is a really important part, but also recovery to make sure, your hormones and your neurotransmitters and everything else is working, digestion and stuff like that. And then, sleep and recovery, that's really important. That's probably as important or more important than the actual workout. And yeah, that's, as far as high intensity weight training go, I'll include some resources and some links to, there's Dr. Doug McGuff's website, there's the HIT or High Intensity Training University, there's Bay's website, there's Jay Vincent, who is pretty active on YouTube, and he's done talks and seminars and stuff like that. This was mentioned briefly and talked about some on Timothy Ferriss's blog some. I know he's made a few posts about it. It was also included in the 4 Hour Body. And, I think it was even included although the episode didn't air, as a series with Tony Robbins, someone was training like this as well too. But yeah, this is something that I've been doing, and, something I kind of specialize, I guess, a little bit, because I don't know of too many health coaches out there that kind of do this, or big ones or popular ones. I know Ben Greenfield does a little bit. I want to say Tony Robbins does maybe a little bit as well too. There is a machine, it is on the spendy end, but I think it's called an ArxFit, and there's ArxFit Omni and Alpha, I believe, and those are spendy, but they're engineered to where you don't have to program or use a weight. It automatically adjusts or adapts to whatever strength you're putting out. So if you put out 500 pounds of weight and you're doing a bench press, then it will match that. Yeah, I think that's really about it, all that I have to say. I do think, personally, I tend to use mostly machines, but I do use some free weights. I think, you can both use them safely. Machines are a bit more safer, I think. The strength curves are more consistent and constant, depending on, gravity and effects like that. But I personally prefer, especially if it's a good machine, especially like a modern or even older Nautilus machine or Med-X or Hammer Strength. A lot of weight training machines are kind of copycats, poor copycats, in my opinion, of kind of Nautilus. I still think they're better often than using body weight or free weights, but that's my opinion. But yeah, check out the links below. I may do more episodes on this, or at least functional kind of exercise and stuff like that, which is pretty simple. It's just walking, hiking, maybe doing some sprints if you're using it for kind of some sports training, but also doing like Tai Chi, Qigong, and like restorative yoga. But yeah, that's it.